Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're wading into a stack of sources that curated some of the trending topics buzzing on X around June 6th and 7th, 2025.
Yeah, it's like getting the raw notes behind what everyone was talking about online.
Exactly. And our mission isn't just to scroll past, it's to quickly unpack the key insights and the essential context that might be hiding just beneath the surface of these posts.
And we've got quite a mix today, haven't we? Everything from big economic claims, border talk.
Right, through to health stuff, digital business, and even, the public spats between big names in tech and politics.
It's quite the spread.
Okay, let's jump right in then, because there was this cluster of posts making some really sweeping claims, things about the economy, the border.
Yeah, I saw those. Accounts like at Pressec, at Gunther Eagleman, at Benny Johnson, the at White House account, too.
Hitting similar notes, right? Economic success, prices down, incomes up, a closed border.
And even debt inflation, that one really stood out. It painted a very, very specific picture.
It did, but it's fascinating when you look at the context and the sources, how it lines up or doesn't. Take cheap gas.
Right. The sources mentioned, okay, the AAA national average was around $3.15 a gallon then, but it varied a lot.
How much variation are we talking?
Well, places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, you were looking at $3.19 or more. Go to Chicago, parts of PA again, and it was hitting like $3.50 up to nearly $4.
So cheap gas really depended heavily on where you actually lived.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That national average could really hide the local reality for a lot of people.
Okay, and what about that debt inflation claim? That sounds incredibly definitive.
It does, doesn't it? And the data, well, tells a more complicated story. The sources pointed to a tax foundation report.
Okay.
It said that, yes, certain policies like tariffs from the previous administration were boosting federal revenue, but they were also apparently adding about $1,200 per year to household costs by 2025.
Wow, $1,200. That's significant.
It is, and the thinking, according to the sources, is that kind of cost increase could actually fuel inflation, not kill it.
So the claim clashes pretty directly with that analysis of trade policy impacts.
Right. The narrative of debt inflation seems to overlook how some policies hit consumers' wallets.
That really does put it in perspective. What about the talk around growth and jobs? There were positive claims there, too.
There were. And, the Bureau of Labor Statistics did report high job openings, over 8 million, in early 2025. That's a good sign, generally.
Okay.
But Fed reports mentioned in the sources showed the growth wasn't really even across the board. Manufacturing seemed to be lagging, for instance, while tech and energy were doing better.
Okay, so uneven growth.
Yeah, and plus, a U.S. bank report actually noted a small rise in unemployment. Went from 4.1% late in 24 up to 4.2% by April 25.
Huh. Even while inflation was easing a bit.
Exactly. Inflation dropped slightly, wage growth held steady, but unemployment ticked up just a bit. So calling the economy simply booming, it kind of misses those nuances, sector differences, that slight rise in unemployment.
And the sources also brought up the national debt picture from earlier, just for context.
They did. Reference the 2025 analysis looking back, I think via Wikipedia, it highlighted that the debt went up significantly in the prior term, like 39%, hitting almost $28 trillion.
And the connection to growth.
Well, the analysis cited found little clear proof that big policies from that time, like the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, actually spurred enough growth to sort of offset that debt increase. It just adds another layer to the fiscal context behind the current claims.
Okay. And the border claim, the closed border idea. How did the source material unpack that?
That was interesting. The sources suggested parts of the claim did align with some policy changes. An AP news piece from May 25 noted a huge drop in Border Patrol releases.
Huge? How?
Like only 7 people released between February and April 2025 compared to over 130,000 the year before. So yes, policy definitely tightened, maybe building on things like Proclamation 10773.
But it wasn't completely sealed off.
That's the nuance the sources added. Despite that massive drop, the administration was apparently still releasing some migrants to shelters. So while things changed drastically, calling it absolutely closed might overstate it, based on what the sources indicated was happening on the ground.
Right. And the timing on the White House Post making some of these claims, that was about 6 months into the term, right?
Yeah.
Started Jan 2025.
Exactly. Early days, relatively speaking.
So when you put all this together, the posts making these strong claims, and then the detailed context from the sources, what's the takeaway?
I think it really highlights the gap, doesn't it, between these concise, often politically charged statements you see on X and the much messier, more complex reality you find when you dig into economic reports, data, journalistic accounts.
It shows why you really need to look past the headline.
Absolutely. These posts offer a simplified narrative, maybe a desired narrative, but the sources reveal something much more nuanced, sometimes even contradictory.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's shift gears completely now. There was this really fascinating claim from at NT Fabiano about walking speed that got people talking.
Oh yeah, the one about fast walkers having higher IQ and bigger brains?
That's the one.
This is where it gets really interesting, because the sources unpack it so well, but with a critical distinction. The research is there, yes. MRI data studies do show a link.
What kind of link?
Slower walkers tend to show markers linked to, let's say, poorer brain health, things like lower brain volume overall, a thinner cerebral cortex, more of those white matter lesions.
Okay.
And a big Duke University study from 2019 really backed this up. It found walking speed at age 45 correlated with these brain characteristics. But here's the kicker.
Yeah.
Cognitive scores measured way back when these people were kids, like age 3, could actually predict their walking speed decades later at 45.
Well, hold on. Scores from age 3 predicting walking speed at 45. That seems profound.
It really does suggest a deep long-term connection. But, and this is the absolute key point the sources emphasize, it's a correlation, not causation. Meaning, just deciding to walk faster isn't going to magically boost your IQ or grow your brain. It doesn't work that way.
So what does the faster walking speed signify then?
It seems to be an indicator, like a reflection of better underlying health, neurological health, metabolic health. The sources cited one study, a PMC one, with a really strong negative correlation, meaning slower walking time strongly linked to poorer cognitive performance in middle-aged adults.
So the speed isn't the cause of good brain function. It's more like a symptom or a sign of a healthier system overall.
Precisely. Think of it like your blood pressure reading. A good reading doesn't make you healthy. It reflects that things are working well underneath. Walking speed seems to be similar, the simple, observable sign that hints at the health of complex, interconnected systems, including the brain.
That's a fantastic way to put it. It totally changes how you interpret that headline. Okay, moving on. Let's look at business efficiency. At Unusual Whales challenged a claim about OnlyFans being the most revenue-efficient company.
Right. The original claim was OnlyFans hitting something like $37 million in revenue per employee. Pretty impressive on its own.
But the challenge came from
the crypto space, mainly. The Post and sources pointed to companies like Tether and Hyperliquid as potentially having much higher metrics.
Tether, the stablecoin issuer.
Exactly. CoinDesk apparently reported them generating $6 billion in revenue in just one quarter, with only about 28 employees.
Wait, $6 billion with 28 people? That completely dwarfs the OnlyFans number.
Massively. And then there's Hyperliquid, another crypto platform mentioned, partly because it directs a big chunk of its revenue, like 54%, back into its own token ecosystem.
So how do these crypto projects achieve that kind of insane revenue per employee compared to OnlyFans or even like Apple or Microsoft?
It's the business model, fundamentally. The sources explain Tether, for instance, manages huge reserves and earns interest. That takes a tiny team relative to the value managed. It's not about employing thousands for content creation or moderation like OnlyFans.
It's leveraging code, finance, network effects, with minimal human overhead needed for the core revenue generation.
That's pretty much it. And the sources note this is a wider trend. Crypto projects often look incredibly efficient on this metric compared to traditional tech giants. Apple was around $2.02 per employee, Microsoft $1. It's scalable digital structures, lean teams.
Though the sources probably mention stability questions too.
Oh yeah, stability regulation. Those are ongoing debates for sure.
Yeah.
But it definitely highlights how digital models are redefining efficiency.
Totally shifts the perspective from just headcount. Okay, now for something quite different, a really poignant post from at Wall Street Apes.
The one about the American truck driver losing his truck.
Yeah.
That one hit hard.
It puts such a human face on the pressures in that industry, especially for the owner-operators, the independent guys.
Absolutely. The video showed the driver just distraught, talking about losing everything because costs kept climbing no matter how many hours he worked.
And the sources provided some context on those costs.
They did.
Yeah.
Pointed specifically to things like insurance, shop expenses, loan payments, commercial truck insurance alone for an owner-operator. The sources cited 2024 data estimating it between $14,000 and $22,000 a year.
$14,000 to $22,000 just for insurance.
Yeah. It's a massive burden, way higher than for drivers leasing through big companies. makes it incredibly tough for independents to survive.
And this isn't just one isolated story, right?
No, the source linked it to a broader trend of small business failures in trucking. It also touched on, the bigger picture, how overall economic conditions, policies, they all play a role.
Did it mention anything specific policy-wise?
It briefly noted how studies have looked at immigration's potential impact, but also mentioned that the current climate and maybe some specific policy changes, like impacting the SBA under previous administrations, could make things even harder for these small operators right now.
It really underscores the vulnerability of people in these essential jobs. Vital for the supply chain, but facing immense pressure.
Yeah, it shows how abstract economic talk translates into really painful realities for individuals.
Okay, let's switch to healthcare. A clip captured by @EricLdo from a CNN debate got a lot of buzz.
Right, this one really zeroed in on a key political dividing line.
What was the core exchange?
It featured a Democratic candidate, Kat Abou-Ghazaleh, running for Congress in Illinois, stating very clearly, every single person in the world deserves health care. And she explicitly included undocumented immigrants in that.
And the reaction.
Immediate pushback from the Republican strategist, Scott Jennings. He pressed her hard on the cost. Who pays for that? Especially extending things like Medicaid to everyone, regardless of immigration status.
It's that classic tension, universal ideals versus taxpayer costs.
Exactly. And the source gave some context on Abou-Ghazaleh positions her as a progressive challenger, maybe representing a generational shift on these issues. Her stance is definitely on the universalist side.
And this isn't just theoretical debate, is it?
No, not at all. The sources mentioned real-world policy battles happening. States like California and Minnesota, they'd previously expanded health care for undocumented residents, but were reportedly facing budget issues and actually considering cutting back those programs.
Wow. So the debate in that clip directly reflects the tough choices states are making, balancing humanitarian goals with fiscal pressures.
Precisely. A very focused snapshot of a huge ongoing conflict.
Right. Shifting again. Let's talk about X itself. A post directly from the @X account announced a partnership with Polymarket.
Yeah, this was significant. Polymarket, as the sources describe it, is basically the world's biggest prediction market.
So people betting on future events.
Exactly. Politics, pop culture, science, you name it. They bet on the outcomes. The sources even mentioned they use tools like UMA's TruthBot to help verify results, apparently with pretty high accuracy on some things.
Okay, so X is bringing prediction markets onto the platform. And the sources also mentioned something called Ludio. How does that fit in?
Right, Ludio came up as related context. It's described as a social-fi dApp, decentralized finance, meets social media built on Solana.
SocialFi. Okay, what does Ludio do?
Apparently, according to a May 2025 article cited, it rewards users with crypto, specifically Solana's SOL token, for their social media activity and engagement. The interesting part is its model. Trading fees generated within the Ludio app are reportedly used to fund these community rewards.
Yeah.
It creates this kind of buzz-driven economy.
I see. So how does the X partnership with Polymarket potentially connect to something like Ludio?
Well, think about it. Platforms like Ludio thrive on social buzz, viral attention, getting people engaged on social media to drive activity in the value of their token, like the LLUD token.
Okay.
Now, X formally integrates a huge prediction market like Polymarket. That's a big platform move. It could potentially amplify the visibility and excitement around prediction markets and related crypto or social-fi projects that feed off that kind of social interaction and attention generated on X.
So it could create ripple effects. More attention on prediction markets on X might spill over and boost engagement for platforms like Ludio that are designed to monetize that social buzz.
That seems to be the potential connection highlighted. It shows X weaving these financial prediction elements deeper into the platform, which could really energize that whole social-fi ecosystem that lives on social engagement.
Fascinating intersection of social media, finance, and crypto. Okay, let's wrap up with a final cluster of posts. This one involves some really big names. Tesla, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, even Kanye West.
Yeah, this is a mix of major business news, very public political drama, art commentary, all tangled together.
Let's start with the positive bit from @Elon Musk.
Right. Musk celebrated a huge milestone for Tesla's Giga Berlin factory. They produced their 8 millionth vehicle.
8 million? That's massive.
It really is. The sources noted it shows incredibly rapid scaling, especially since they hit that 5,000 cars per week rate back in March 2023. A clear business win.
But as often happens online, this success story immediately got tied into other dramas.
Instantly. The sources pointed to this very public fallout happening between Musk and Donald Trump around the same time. An article in The Independent on June 6th detailed it.
What was the spark?
Apparently, tensions flared after Musk went on X a few days earlier and slammed a spending bill, calling it a disgusting abomination. Reports said this led to Trump kicking Musk off some White House advisory role.
And the disagreement was about?
The Independent piece specifically mentioned Musk opposed the bill removing an EV mandate. Obviously, that clashes directly with Tesla's interests. So a policy dispute turning into a public feud.
Between two figures with enormous online platforms, and public opinion on Musk was shifting too, according to the sources.
Yeah, a UMass Amherst poll from April 25, cited in the sources, apparently showed his approval rating had dipped about 5 points since late 24. The sources suggested it might be linked to backlash over some of his ideas about government efficiency, maybe proposed cuts to Social Security and Medicare.
Okay, so business success, political fights, shifting public sentiment, and then art enters the picture.
Right. This dramatic artwork popped up, shared by accounts like at Autism Capital, at SN1 on X.
What did it depict?
It showed Kanye West and Elon Musk dressed in these, old-climby robes, while Donald Trump was in a modern suit. This was right during that Musk-Trump tension.
Bring that significance.
Well, the sources noted reports that Kanye had actually tried to mediate between Musk and Trump. The robes. Maybe a Yeezy fashion reference, symbolizing, the people or tradition versus modern government.
And the caption was humorous.
Yeah, something like, haters will say this isn't biblically accurate, using that grand style and humor to comment on the whole larger-than-life drama. The sources also tied it back to Kanye's own history of controversies and lost partnerships.
Wow. And then, to top it all off, Brian Johnson weighed in.
He did, kind of humorously. Johnson, the guy focused on extreme longevity and self-optimization with his Blueprint project.
Right, the sleep guy.
Exactly. He apparently posted something lighthearted, suggesting maybe the Trump-Musk tensions could be solved if they just got some good sleep.
Bringing his own focus into it.
Yeah, he often shares research related to his work, citing studies on how just one night of poor sleep, say 4 hours, can drastically reduce the activity of crucial immune cells, though it's apparently recoverable. So he used his platform to inject a bit of wellness advice into the political spat.
Okay, so let's unpack this final group. You've got a huge Tesla milestone, a very public clash between Musk and Trump over policy, hints of changing public views, art commenting on it all, and even longevity advice popping up.
It really shows how interconnected everything is in the online conversation around these major figures, doesn't it? Business, politics, culture, even health. It all gets tangled together publicly in real time.
A business success isn't just a business success. It becomes part of this much larger, ongoing public narrative.
Exactly. It gets woven into the political drama, the cultural commentary, everything else playing out online.
So we've just taken a quick dive through a snapshot of X trends from June 6th and 7th, 2025. Covered a lot of ground.
We really did. Presidential claims versus data, brain health, crypto efficiency, trucking struggles, healthcare debates, prediction markets, social fi, and this whole dynamic between major tech and political figures.
It is amazing how much gets surfaced in the online discourse. And often you see these really confident claims right alongside data or context that seems to complicate or even contradict them.
Yeah, it really highlights that contrast.
What stands out to you from all this? It really makes you think, how do you even navigate such a fast-moving stream where one post can trigger so much reaction and needs layers of context just to start understanding the full picture?
That's the core challenge, isn't it? And also the opportunity, the need to engage critically with all this information swirling around us.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Catch you in the next one.